This is the second in several parts. I'm not exactly sure how many parts it's going to take that deals with rebuilding the youth rifle, the Winchester 422. And I made a couple choices here. I was going to send out the tube, the barrel, and the caulking linkage and some other parts to have them blued, but I've had trouble hooking up with the people that I was going to have them blued by, and so I've decided just to clean them up, which I've already done, and they're not too bad in terms of there's no pitting or significant rust or anything like that. So we're going to go ahead and use what we've got, and I guess the other reason is that if I don't get this done, that youth rifle, or the youth that I had planned to give this rifle to, is going to be not a youth anymore. I need to get going on it. So that's what we decided to do here, and these parts are cleaned and oiled and ready to go. I've also cleaned all the other parts, the internals that we took out in the first video in this series. And I thought we'd take a minute and polish the rest of the parts that warrant polishing. One is the piston, and really this piston doesn't even touch anything, or probably doesn't. It might wiggle its way up the tube, but for the most part it doesn't. And so polishing it is kind of a luxury. It's something we might do because we want to do a nice job. The other piece is the trigger housing here, and again, this does not require polishing, but we're going to go ahead and polish it anyway. What we're going to use is a spinning tool here. We'll start with the piston first. The spinning tool is a tube on this end, so the piston fits over it like that. If you have a piston that doesn't have a center latch here, you could use this end of the tool and just put it in and spin it that way. And the only thing to be a kind of trick to it, I guess, is kind of put your thumb on there so it doesn't spin too fast. We're using an abrasive wheel, a 3M abrasive wheel, and this is probably a little more aggressive than we need, but it's the only wheel I got, and so we're going to go ahead and use that. If you really wanted a finer polish, they have other wheels that go down from this. I think there's a red one, and there may be others as well. So it could be a stepped polishing process if you're really going to polish something important. We have our parts here. You can see that they polished up pretty well. They're looking very nice. Like I say, we'll hit this with the stone just to make sure that it's a nice, crisp, and very certain edge to it. And polished up the trigger housing as well. It's looking pretty good. And in case anybody was interested in making something like this, the tube itself, the inside diameter on this is what is it, about 425, and that would be what, about 10, 12 millimeters, something like that. And then the exterior of that tube is ½ inch. That's what, about 14 millimeters. The solid end is 625, which is 5/8 of an inch, and I guess about 18 millimeters, something like that. So that's how I go about polishing parts. And we have one other issue with the gun that we need to deal with, and that is with the stock. So let's go take a look at that. This is the stock off of the Winchester 422 or the Diana 22. Some of these have a little dot here. This one doesn't. And the stock's in reasonably good shape. I wasn't planning to do much to it. I did ask the grandson what he thought about sanding and refinishing this, and he said no, he wanted to do it in camo. So we will sand it a little bit, and then put a camo finish on it. But in looking at the stock, I noticed that there was a small crack in it right here. So we're going to zoom in on that and take a look at how we might go about fixing that crack. All right, here's our stock. Here's the fore end of the stock. And I noticed in taking a look at this, there's a very slight crack in the stock. It runs right along here. You can see that. Maybe you can pry it apart a little bit. Yeah, you can see that there's a crack there. And it's not going to get better on its own. So what we're going to do is glue this back together, and hopefully it'll be a good bond there. And then we can put whatever kind of finish we want on the outside. Camo would be, of course, the preferred option. So let's take a look at how we're going to go about this. Well, this is not a particularly bad crack, and it's in a nice spot in a way because you can put a clamp on here pretty easily. What we'll do is we'll glue it. I went and got some Gorilla Glue. This of course bonds virtually everything, including wood, and this is clear. I thought that I would be able to use it with a syringe and split this just a crack and take some glue out in the syringe and then inject it in there. And at that point we can put a clamp on it pretty easily, like so, and hold it together until the glue dries. And that should work here. If you notice, there's not a lot of meat on this side because it's cut out for the caulking linkage here. And so we don't have a lot of options as far as pinning it or anything, and I don't think it's that bad anyway. So that's what we're going to do. It turns out, though, that the syringe, the intake into the syringe is too small, and the glue is too thick, so we're not going to be able to do that. We're going to have to get something else, a toothpick or something, and work the glue into the crack. All right, well, here's our setup to get this stock repaired. I've got the stock clamped to the table here. I don't have a vise on this bench, or I would have used a vise to put it in, but so it's secure. I put a little small piece of thin cardboard here to protect the stock there, cardboard on the table here, and what we're going to do is use this stake to wedge in there and wedge open the crack here. And I've got a pointed stick here. It's I think a shish kebab skewer, and we're going to try and work some of the glue, or Gorilla Glue rather, down into the joint. Once we get it glued, we'll take our clamps and clamp this down so it's nice and tight. So let's go ahead and get started on this and see what we can do here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and wedge this open. Maybe a hair more. There's kind of a feel to it where you don't want to wedge it too much and break the stock, but enough so it opens up like that. Take our glue. And our skewer. Just going to try and put some along in there. The nice thing is we'll be able to sand this later if we need to and get rid of any excess. Up just a little bit here. Okay. So, okay. Let's take the wedge out, and if it's in there, it'll squeeze up a little bit. did. Kind of what we were hoping would happen. And now we can clamp it. And a little more squeezes up. Okay, we're going to turn this over and just take a look at the other side and see what it looks like in terms of the crack. I'll try and get the light in here so you can see just a little bit of wet here, and that tells me that the glue actually went all the way through the crack, and so we're in good shape. Okay, I've changed the clamp just a little bit. Before I had it clamped all the way down here at the bottom. And it looked to me like that was actually separating this crack just a little bit. So I've moved it up so that it's actually attached here and hopefully is pressing it together. And we'll let that dry. All right, well, it's been overnight. Let's go ahead and pull our clamp off here. Let's see how our crack has worked out. I got a little bit of glue dripped down inside here, but I can take care of that with the Dremel tool. This seems to be all right. The crack is can't separate it by separating the forks out here, so I think we're all right. We'll shoot it for a while and keep an eye on it and see what happens. We're getting ready to fit the piston seal to the tube, and if you recall, there's a pin that goes in here, and we drilled it out in order to get the screw out of there. And there's the screw. You can see it's got a cutout there where that pin came in. So something like that. And where that pin came in is really just to hold this in place so it doesn't back out over time. But that's gone. That's a 4mm 0.7 pitch screw there. And this is the original piston seal that we took out. It's got the cover for the front that the screw goes in, and then a backing piece here goes behind the seal. This came from John Greenwald, JG Airgun Biz, and it comes with a breech seal. This is leather for the breech here. And then it comes with this assembly. And this assembly is identical to the one I took out originally. The screw is the same size. The backing plate's the same size. This front piece, this retainer's the same size. So this is the one we're going to use. And what we'll do is we'll put this back on, and we're going to put a new pin in. We're not going to put a pin back in the old hole. We're going to move it over here third of a turn or so, and we'll put a new hole and a new pin in, and then we'll assemble the piston. And what we're going to do is fit it to this tube, and basically what you want is for this seal on the piston to slide down the tube. We'll go ahead and put the tube at an angle, something like 45 or whatever. And you want the piston to basically slide down the tube of its own weight. Not to slide fast like that, but fairly slow. And we do that dry. We fit it dry, and then we soak it before we actually install the piston into the tube. So that's where we're at.